There's something deeply underestimated in our modern understanding of love, and that is the power of presence, the kind that doesn't come wrapped in grand gestures or loud proclamations, but in quiet, sustained reliability. We've grown up on narratives that equate love with fireworks, with poetic words, with sweeping romantic gestures. But that's not what sustains a relationship. That's not what reveals the depth of someone's devotion. What reveals that depth is something much more subtle and far more telling. When someone is madly in love with you, their presence doesn't fluctuate with mood or convenience. They're there consistently, not just when it's easy or when it serves their interests. They show up when they're tired. They show up when they've had a bad day. They show up when there's nothing to gain. They show up simply because you matter. And the key is they do this without performance. They don't draw attention to it. They don't expect praise. They don't make it about them. There's no scoreboard. They are present because their love demands it of them, not because they're trying to prove anything. Psychologically speaking, this type of presence reveals a secure attachment pattern, an ability to engage in intimacy without anxiety or avoidance. It reflects emotional maturity, a regulated nervous system, and an orientation toward partnership over self-interest. And more importantly, it represents something sacred in relationships: trustworthiness. The bedrock of every meaningful bond is not romance, it's reliability. Now, here's the fascinating paradox. The more consistent someone is, the more invisible their love may seem. Because our minds are conditioned to seek novelty, drama, or chaos, often as echoes of our early attachment wounds, we sometimes overlook the calm. But love that endures doesn't scream for attention. It simply holds steady. So when you're asking, Nang, are they madly in love with me? Don't just listen for what they say. Watch what they do when no one's watching. Are they around when life is inconvenient? Are they there without needing to be asked? Are they consistent without the expectation of recognition? That's not just affection, that's commitment. Because real love doesn't need to shout to be real. Sometimes it's clearest in the silence. And those who understand that, those who offer presence instead of promises, are often the ones who love the deepest. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. One of the most revealing indicators that someone is madly in love has nothing to do with how much they touch you, flatter you, or promise you the world. It has to do with how attentively they notice. In a world that's increasingly distracted, where attention spans are fractured by endless scrolling and notifications, there's something radical, even sacred, about someone who pays close attention. Real love observes, it remembers, it tracks the little details, not because it has to, but because it can't help doing so. When someone truly loves you, your smallest preferences become important to them. They notice the way your voice subtly changes when you're upset, but trying to hide it. They remember that you take your coffee without sugar, that you get overwhelmed in crowds, or that you always reread the same book when you're anxious. These aren't dramatic actions. They're quiet, almost imperceptible behaviors, but they speak volumes. And psychologically, that level of attentiveness indicates emotional attunement, one of the deepest forms of connection a person can offer. Attunement means that someone has not only made room for you in their life, but they've adjusted the rhythm of their internal world to include you. It's not just noticing, it's caring enough to keep noticing. The real irony is that this kind of love is easy to overlook because it doesn't arrive with grand gestures. It shows up when your partner brings you water without asking, or texts you that specific encouragement you needed before a big meeting because they knew it mattered. It's not reactive attention either. It's proactive. It anticipates. It sees before you even speak. This type of love also reflects something crucial: responsibility. When someone notices what's going on with you beneath the surface, it means they aren't just seeing you as a means to fulfill their needs. They're seeing you with all your intricacies and choosing to invest energy in caring for your emotional experience. That kind of love is rare and it cannot be faked. And so if you're wondering whether someone's feelings for you run deep, don't just ask how often they say, "I love you." Ask yourself instead, are they watching closely enough to see who I really am? And am I doing the same in return? Because love isn't loud. Love listens. Love observes. And if you found someone who pays attention to the parts of you no one else notices, cherish them. In silence, they're telling you everything you need to hear. There's something profoundly telling about consistency, not just in grand gestures, but in the small repeated acts of presence and care. We often overlook these because they seem so ordinary, but that's exactly where the truth of love hides. The person who's madly in love doesn't just show up when it's convenient, when it's exciting, or when there's something in it for them. They show up when it's inconvenient, when it's boring, when it costs them energy, time, or emotional effort. That's where love stops being performance and starts being substance. If someone's love is real, they will be reliable, not flawless, no one is, but dependable in a way that slowly builds trust, like bricks laid one by one over time. The person who checks in on you after a hard day, not just the first time, but the 10th. The one who keeps their promises when they could easily get away with not doing so. The one who listens to you repeat the same struggle without becoming dismissive. That kind of steadiness is not just rare, it's disciplined. And discipline in the realm of relationships is underrated. Philosophically, this echoes a deeper truth. Love, in its highest form, is volitional. It is not merely a feeling. Feelings are transient, shifting with moods, hormones, or the weather. But love as an act of will, love as chosen loyalty, that is where it becomes meaningful. The person who consistently chooses you, especially when it's not easy, is the one who reveals the true depth of their affection. From a psychological standpoint, consistency signals emotional security. When we experience steady, predictable care, our nervous system calms. We feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to trust, to grow. And that's the environment in which a relationship flourishes, not in the firework moments, but in the warm, stable glow of sustained care. So if you're evaluating love, not fantasy, not infatuation, but real love, pay attention to who's still there on the hard days. Who shows up when nothing exciting is happening? Who keeps choosing the relationship even when other options whisper for their attention? That's the person who's in love, not just with the idea of you, but with the reality of walking life beside you. Love isn't proven in intensity, it's proven in consistency. And if someone's habits speak of quiet, steady presence over time, believe them. In that silence, they're saying the one thing we all long to hear, I'm not going anywhere. There's a habit that often goes unnoticed, but it speaks volumes about how deeply someone loves you. It's the habit of making you part of their future, not in words, but in action. When someone is madly in love, they don't just exist in the present with you. They begin to include you in their long-term vision, sometimes without even realizing it. Their plans, dreams, and decisions subtly start to account for your presence. This isn't about a dramatic declaration. It's about the quiet shift in orientation from me to we. Watch how they speak about time. Do they say, I want to travel next summer? Or do they say, maybe we could go somewhere next summer? It's subtle, but it's a form of psychological inclusion. You're no longer an accessory to their life. You've become part of the architecture. And this isn't just romantic fantasy. It's a fundamental shift in identity. When someone incorporates you into their future, it's because their brain has already started to recalibrate what home and stability mean, and you're in it. There's a profound psychological foundation here. Human beings are wired for attachment, and one of the strongest signs of secure attachment is proactive planning that includes the other person. When a relationship is deeply rooted, the individual stops making decisions in isolation. It's not a loss of independence, it's the emergence of interdependence. And that distinction is vital. Interdependence doesn't mean you lose your identity. It means you expand it to make room for someone else without displacing yourself. Philosophically, this reflects a commitment to something larger than oneself. It mirrors the idea of a shared project, two lives intertwined, building something of lasting value. Love is not just about emotional intimacy or physical attraction. It's about building a life. And when someone begins to adjust their trajectory, E, then in small ways to align with yours. That is a silent, powerful expression of love. You don't need someone to promise you forever in poetic language. You need someone who starts acting like forever might be worth building, who shows you through their daily habits, their future talk, and their life management that you matter, not just now, but later. That kind of love doesn't need a grand speech. It's embedded in the small choices that speak of permanence. When someone starts planning with you in mind, even quietly, believe it. That's love choosing you again and again, before the words are ever said. One of the clearest yet most overlooked indicators of deep love is the habit of emotional availability, not in the dramatic sense of pouring out feelings constantly, but in the quiet, consistent presence someone offers when it matters most. We tend to think of love as an outburst, romantic gestures, sudden surprises, passionate confessions. But the truth is, the real test of love shows itself when life isn't romantic, when things are boring, stressful, even painful, and the person you love doesn't disappear. They stay. Emotional availability isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It's someone sitting with you in silence when you're overwhelmed. It's someone checking in on your smallest needs, not because they're told to, but because they're paying attention. This kind of presence is anchored in something deeper than infatuation. It's empathy. And empathy, when practiced consistently, is one of the most sophisticated expressions of mature love. From a psychological perspective, what we're talking about is attunement, the ability to notice, interpret, and respond to another person's emotional state. This is not something we're all born with. It requires effort, humility, and a willingness to put ego aside. When someone is truly in love, they want to know how you're doing. Not just when you're cheerful or easy to deal with, but especially when you're messy, difficult, or fragile. And what's powerful is that emotional availability is not about solving your problems. It's not about fixing. It's about being with you in them. People often confuse love with utility. He helped me with this, or she fixed that for me. But the more meaningful form of love isn't transactional. It's the love that shows up with no solution in hand, just the willingness to stand beside you. That requires emotional courage. Philosophically, you could say this is the essence of what it means to bear the burden of another's suffering, not to take it from them, but to share in it. That's love at its most sacred. It's not convenient. It doesn't come only when things are good. It comes when it's needed, and it stays even when it's hard. So if you're wondering whether someone truly loves you, look not at the moments of celebration, but at the moments of quiet endurance. Who shows up when there's nothing to gain? Who listens when you can't even explain what's wrong? That's the person who loves you, not in words, but in presence. And in the end, presence is the loudest declaration of love we'll ever receive. There's a subtle but profoundly telling habit that reveals deep, enduring love, the consistent prioritization of your well-being without being asked, not in the grand theatrical gestures we often associate with romance, but in the small, almost invisible choices that consistently communicate, "You matter to me." And these aren't decisions made out of obligation or performance. They're expressions of value, of deep psychological alignment with your needs and desires. When someone truly loves you, they begin to internalize your emotional landscape. They don't just think about you. They think with you in mind. Their actions, their planning, their responses begin to reflect a shared identity, a we, not just a me. This is a shift from individualism to relational integration. It's the movement from ego to unity. Now, this doesn't mean they lose themselves or become overly self-sacrificing. On the contrary, it means they are secure enough in who they are that they willingly make space for you in their lives. That's a radical act, psychologically speaking. It suggests they've reordered their internal value system. It's no longer just about what they want. It's about what you both need to flourish. The philosophical core of this is the ethic of care. It's the principle that love is not merely an emotion, it is a mode of attention, a disciplined, intentional way of seeing another human being as worthy of ongoing, thoughtful consideration. It's in how they wait to eat until you're served, how they remember small details from conversations weeks ago, how they instinctively shift their tone when they sense you've had a hard day. These are micro acts of devotion rooted in attunement and expressed through constancy. And what makes this habit powerful is its quietness. It's not loud, flashy, or meant to impress anyone. That's why many people miss it. But if you pay attention, you'll notice real love isn't trying to be seen. It simply is. Its presence is felt in how you're protected, respected, and included over and over again, even when it's inconvenient for the other person. So the question becomes, who's already doing that for you? Who is showing up in small, consistent ways that make your life lighter, easier, and more secure? And perhaps more importantly, are you that person for someone else? Because love, in its truest form, is less about being swept away and more about being held quietly, consistently, and with great care. And when you find someone who lives that out with you, hold on. That's not just love, that's rare.